Now, the question is whether or not the IEC, in relying on Section 47, was correct. So it's about the interpretation of Section 47, whether it excludes or it includes Mr. Zuma. That's the whole case. That's the whole thing, issue of this case.
No.
So it's about the interpretation of Section 47.
Yes, no, it is. Well, that part is correct.
Yes.
It is about the interpretation of Section 47.
Yes.
But the point I was making, my lord, is that it's not about the what I call the merits in our heads, which is whether Mr. Zuma is excluded or included only. It's about the preliminary point that I'm raising.
Yes.
Whether, in the first place, the administration, for lack of a better word, of Section 47 lies in the hands of the IEC.
Okay.
That's
so
the issue.
We at this stage, we are at ultra vires point, whether or not the IEC had authority to do what it did. That's whole thing about. That's whole debate about jurisdiction, ultra vires authority. Yes. So that's where we are now in relation to Section 47.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, and that's why I said
your argument is the following: IEC does not have authority. That authority belongs to the National Assembly or Parliament.
Yes.
Is it well?
Yes.
Okay.
And
sure.
Thank you, my lord. So, my lord, and we say this for the following reasons. If you look at where Section 47 is located,
yes,
in the constitutional scheme, it's in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 of the Constitution is headed Parliament. The Parliament meaning the National Assembly and the NCOP. That's what we call Parliament in South Africa. And then the heading to Section 47 says membership. And so it deals with the membership of the National Assembly. And as if that's not enough, the section itself makes it clear what it deals with. It says, it starts by, crucially, starts by reminding us of Section 19. It says, every citizen who is qualified to vote for the National Assembly is eligible to be a member of the Assembly. Very important. You know, how a statute is framed, a statute is basically a way of communicating. It's a National Assembly writing us a letter as a nation. So they start by reminding us of Section 19, that every citizen, including Mr. Zuma, who is qualified to vote for the National Assembly is eligible to be a member of the Assembly. And then it says, except. Now that formulation already tells you something. We try to include everyone, and then but there are exceptions. So already that is the ethos of this, that we must not start by excluding, as the IEC seeks to do. We start by including, and then we apply the exceptions. And then this is the crucial part. It says, except, we go to E. Anyone who, after this section took effect, there's no problem with that, is convicted of an offense, that's the first thing. And, that word end is important, sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment without the option of a fine, as the Lordship said, so far so good. Either in the Republic or outside of the Republic and so on. And then, but, again, so there's another exception within the exception. But, it says, or this is what we call a proviso now. But no one may be regarded as having been sentenced until an appeal against the conviction or sentence has been determined or until the time has, of the appeal has expired. A disqualification under this paragraph ends 5 years after the sentence is completed. Yeah. So we'll come to the bits and pieces of that section. The point we're making now is simply this. The IEC does not have or must show this court, in terms of the factual case, the IEC must tell this court where it gets the authority to implement Section 47. And the answer is nowhere. And the quotation I put there from Baxter is very important. You don't say when you apply the rule of law, well, we can do everything that we are not prohibited from doing. No, it doesn't work like that. It says we can only do those things that were authorized by law to do. So if you are doing something as a public official, if someone wakes you up and says, where did you get the authority for this? You must be able to wake up and say, section this and section that and section that, and then we'll leave you alone. But if you are unable to point to any authority that empowers you to do something, then it's ipso facto ultra vires. Now, so the only authority, the only power of the IEC, my Lord, is found in section 190 of the Constitution. So it cannot do anything outside of that. The National Assembly is entrusted with the power to manage its own affairs in terms of section 57 of the Constitution, right? One of its affairs is to determine who is a member and who is not a member. And that power is, by separation of powers, circumscribed to the National Assembly. The judiciary cannot get into it, the executive cannot get into it, right? Let alone the IEC, some independent institution, which is not even one. The judiciary cannot get into it, the executive cannot get into it, right? Let alone the IEC, some independent institution, which is not even one of those. It is put into the four corners of section 57 of the Constitution as a function of the National Assembly. Now let's come to your specific example. That, what you just described is actually what happens in practice. Because I vote for what your ladyship calls my person. If I vote for, if the IEC allows my person to be on the list now, right? That was on the 28th of March. And then in April, that person is sentenced to 10 years. What has happened? The IEC has got nothing to do with it. The National Assembly will deal with that issue. Because the person was sentenced, let's say, on the 5th of May. On the 29th of May, when the people are being sworn in, in managing its affairs, the National Assembly will then say, no, Mr. My person, you are not eligible to be a member of the National Assembly. But it's even worse, my lady. Forget about elections. In 2028, my person gets sentenced to 20 years. The National Assembly, not the IEC, will then say, Mr. Person, you've now been sentenced last week, you can no longer be a member, and so on and so on. Right until the end of it, the IEC does not enter anywhere in this. Right. So, that's the whole issue. Section 57 must be given content. And also Section 48 of the Constitution. Section 48 of the Constitution says that members, in reality, become members once they are sworn in. Right? Just like we all become whatever we are, once we're sworn in. Prime Minister, Cabinet Minister, President, whatever. So, the reality, that's why the Americans came with this concept of what they call a president-elect. So until you have been sworn in, you are a president-elect or you are an MP-elect, if you like. Right? You are not a president, or you are not a member of the National Assembly, per se. You're just a person who has been voted in. That is why Rule 13 of the Rules of the National Assembly says that at its first sitting, and you'll find that expression in so many places in the Constitution, the first sitting of the National Assembly is the one that is regulated. Why is it regulated? Because it's the special place where all these questions are dealt with. That meeting is chaired deliberately by the Chief Justice. Why? Because nobody is a member, there's no speaker, there's no president, there's nothing. We are still in the lacuna of the elections. That's why the Chief Justice presides over that meeting, my lady, until what happens? Until the speaker is elected. That's the end. The Chief Justice even has the power to determine when that meeting will take place. The minute people have been sworn in, if the Chief Justice went there and said, no, you must have a meeting next week, they'll say, what's wrong with you? And the reason for that is because those people, that is how the National Assembly manages its membership system. Not just in that first sitting, but throughout the 5 years. Where the IEC comes into this is nowhere. The IEC, I'm sorry.
Within the scheme of things that you have just outlined,
yes.
Then how does IEC feature.
Yes.
With reference to section 27, because I think that there must be a start before you go to the National Assembly. We must have started somewhere.
Yes. Okay.
So maybe one might say your argument is it puts the cart before the horse, because we need to start somewhere.
Correct.
As you have correctly pointed out, that in terms of section 190, the IEC is the body that is tasked with managing and managing and conducting elections. So that is their function.
Yes.
So that function obviously must include the entire section 27, submission of the list.
Yes.
Because I'll tell you why I'm saying so. We have got section 47 of the Constitution. Sorry, section 46 of the Constitution. That section says the National Assembly is composed of no fewer than 350 and no more than 400 men and women elected as members in terms of the electoral system that is prescribed by the national legislation. That national legislation, we know that it's an electoral act. Okay. Now, and that electoral system is based on the national common voters roll. Now, in other words, the members of National Assembly are sourced from the candidate list. Is that not so?
Yes, my lord, that is so.
Yes. But is it not where the screening should take place when that list is submitted? Because once the screening has taken place, then those people, if they're elected, they go to the National Assembly.
No, they don't necessarily, my lord. That's what I was explaining to Justice Jacob. Those people will be members of the National Assembly if at that time, at the first sitting, they qualify. And think of it like this, my lord.
Well, let's say for argument's sake, they get 20 or 20. So,
200.
Well, 200. Those 200 will go to the national parliament. Is that not so? Now it will be for the National Assembly now to do its function in terms of section 1.
That's the point. That's the point I'm making.
Yes.
The point I'm making is this. You cannot say those, I think the number, I stand corrected, but I'm told that the number is around 15,000, about 15,000 people right now who have been, who are on the candidate lists of various parties, various levels, right? Now, those 15,000 people are not members of parliament. They're not members of the National Assembly. They're nothing. Members, section 47, which deals with membership of the National Assembly, kicks in once those people are elected. That's why section 19(1)(3)(b) says every person has a right to stand for elections, and if elected, to hold office. That bridge, or the election is the bridge through which your section 19(3)(b) election rights kick in. And that's the simple point we're making, my lord, is that you cannot then have the IEC exceeding its powers. And your lordship, I thought your lordship was going to section 30, but we can start at section 30.
That's where I want to go.
Yes. Can I just finish this thought, and then I'll hear Justice Mutulu. The answer to this, to what we're saying, is that we've said 191 is out. 192 says that you may also get power from legislation. So where in this instance do they get their power? It is, anticipating the question from Justice Mutulu, it is section 30(1), right? Section 30(1) says that any person, including the Chief Electoral Officer, may object to the nomination of a candidate on the following grounds: that the candidate is not qualified to stand in the election. Not the candidate is not qualified to be a member of the National Assembly, because that's not their province, so to speak. Sorry, Justice Mutulu, thank you for allowing me to finish that thought.
I wanted to ask you, Mr. Mpofu, if the powers of the Commission to screen from the list whether a candidate qualifies, and I want to use the word from this section, qualifies
to stand in the election.
No, to be appointed into office, not to stand for the election. So it's the list.
Yes.
So let's look at section 30. 1A, right?
Yes, that's the one I just read.
It says the objection relates to qualification to stand in the elections, right? And then the Commission has the administrative authority to screen that list, to determine whether anyone is qualified to stand in the election?
Normally, maybe they do have that power, but that's not the power that brings us here today. The power that brings us here today is the power that arises from the power of the IEC to determine an objection, right?
Yes.
So they did not exercise the power that they have. As you see, it says any person, including the chief electoral officer, may object. They didn't. So that means, that's another thing that's wrong with this picture, by the way. That means that they waited for an objection, screened, not the candidate, screened, if you want, the objection. And then what I'm saying is that in doing so, they could only have exercised the power defined in section 31A of the objection itself would be on the grounds that the candidate is not qualified to stand in the election.
Yes, but didn't they exercise their power in terms of section 33? Because they made a decision on the objection.
Yes, but that's what brings us here. We're here to appeal the decision on the objection. That's why we're here today, is to appeal. They made the decision in 33 and then we're appealing. We can only appeal here in this court.
Yes, and hence my question to you, doesn't there